Here we go. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our next instalment in our advanced webinar series. So if you've been on any of our webinars, you'll probably recognise me. My name's Nikki Kimball. I'm one of the educational consultants at Just2easy. I do the majority of the webinar training. And for today's session, we're going to be looking at developing numeracy skills using Just2easy for Key Stage 2. So just a little bit of housekeeping, as always. It is a 45-minute session. If you've been on my webinars before, you might need to give me a bit of a 5 minutes grace with that. I do tend to run over just because I plan so much content. Questions can be asked via the chat. I've got Sophie, our office manager, in the background. She is our Just2easy resident genius. So what Sophie can't answer isn't worth knowing. So you can ask any questions via the chat at any point. I am going to do a Q&A session at the end of the training as well. We had a very, very good Q&A session at the end of the Key Stage 1 session. So you can ask me stuff not even relevant to the maths that we've been over. If you just want to know little bits about Just2easy, you can put me on the spot. This session is being recorded and it will be hosted on YouTube, where we have a webinars playlist and all of our training is recorded there. So you can watch any of that on demand. Now, I have planned a lot of content for today's session. So we're going to look at why you should use digital tools to support numeracy skills and the research that supports that. We're going to have a look at which Just2easy tools you can use to support numeracy in your classroom. So I am going to show you some activity ideas that you could use. So we're going to look at JIT Branch, JIT Mix, Database, J2 Code. We're going to specifically look at Logo for that. TT and SATS Blast, importing existing worksheets using J2 PDF, and the measuring tools in J2E5. So in the Key Stage 1 session, we looked at using the ruler. Today, we're going to look at creating our own angles and using a protractor to measure them. I'm also going to do a resource library activity showcase at the end. So that is going to be a show and tell, just to give you an idea of what sort of maths resources are available for you to use pre-made in the library. And a Q&A session. So just a quick reminder how you can access Just2easy. We are accessible via any device, anywhere, and you can access us via j2e.com. When you land on the signing in page, there are various methods of signing in. So you would sign in the normal method. So my C2K schools, you can log in using the EA button, which is here. Any of you Welsh teachers out there, you can click on the Hub button. I know we've got some Maltese teachers accessing us, so you would go through the normal Malta iLearn avenue of logging in. So that is how you would log in. Now, just to talk about why we should be using digital tools for the numeracy in the digital age. These are two research papers that I used when I was sort of designing this course. This one in particular is quite interesting, literature review, and this was done by the Scottish Government. So any of you Scottish schools could use this as a reason to be using digital tools in your classroom for teaching numeracy. So this one actually proved there was conclusive evidence that the digital tools can support educational attainment, in particular for numeracy, maths and science learning. Now, reasons for that, it gives the students more time for active learning in the classroom. They can be used for active learning outside of the classroom and providing self-directed spaces such as blogs and forums and access to games with learning benefits. So, we're going to look at games-based learning with our TT Blast and our SATS Blast. Great for sort of supporting that consolidation of knowledge that they're learning in school. The digital resources provide learners with opportunities to choose the learning resources suited to their needs and any accessibility settings that they might need. And the resources provide safer spaces for formative assessment and feedback. So you can give one-to-one feedback to your students using learning conversations within the pupil files. That's a great way of giving them some feedback about the work that they've done in a safe space that isn't sort of open to anybody else hearing. It's very specific to them. This one was done by the Education Endowment Fund. Again, well worth a read if you get chance. I know that you're probably working a 70-hour week and you're probably thinking, I haven't got a chance to read a research paper. So just to summarize what it says, this is all about using technology to support numeracy skills. And it can be very effective as a short but focused intervention to improve learning. And it actually proves that it's most beneficial when there's regular and frequent use, so about 3 times a week over the course of a term, 5 to 10 weeks. And actually sustained use over a longer period is less effective for improving attainment. So it's kind of using it as and when you need it, not all the time, and it keeps the children motivated. And in research interventions, technology is best used as a supplement to normal teacher rather than a replacement for it. So there you go. You're not out of a job just yet. Now, in particular for our tools, why you should use digital tools to develop numeracy. So digital tools can provide that individualized environment for your students. So they can have personalized levels of support and scaffolding. There's certain accessibility settings that we can put in place for our students. So things like word lists, measuring tools, text to speech, speech to text. It's a great way of the students being able to pick and choose the level of support that they need. The tools incorporate a range of different modalities, so audio and visual, so it's great for the students to get down their knowledge and understanding that might not be, writing things down. As I said, feedback using learning conversations gives you as a teacher the opportunity to provide better and more structured feedback that is personal to each student. Technology integration can influence students' motivation and engagement levels. There are a lot of research papers that support this. They love using technology, we all know that, as long as it's a focused activity. It offers students a safe space to see, explore and interact with mathematical concepts. So you can teach the abstract concepts and they can practice these skills using, more practical activities. And lastly, the use of technology helps to reduce inequalities and promote inclusion. So it levels out the playing field for our students. They can add that support and scaffolding if they need it. And as they sort of grow in confidence, they can drop those supports. Right, that's enough about me talking about why you should be using digital technology for numeracy. Just a reminder, we have got our YouTube channel. It's called Just2easy TV. There are so many videos on there now. We're posting at least 2 a week generally. We're recording all of our webinars, so you can access this. So if you find this webinar useful, you think colleagues would find it useful as well, you can find that recording on YouTube. We've also got our live lessons. Now, we did one yesterday, which unfortunately recording it was a bit blurry, so I'm going to have to re-record it. It's just typical. But these are a slightly different learning concept. And they're designed for you to play at the front of your classroom and for you and your students to follow along. So it's a great way of upskilling yourself, seeing how the tools are taught. So I will be your teacher, and it sort of upskills everyone. There's different focuses, there's different age ranges that it's geared at. So please have a look at those. They're really useful. And if you've got any requests, please let us know. We'd love to be able to accommodate anything that you're doing in class. Apologies if you did engage with the Key Stage 1 maths presentation last week. The first couple of slides are going to be kind of a redo of what we looked at last week, but we will quickly move on to a broader content. Just a reminder, I'm not going to go through how, but you can set up teaching classes. So the majority of you, I think, are joining us from Northern Ireland. A few from Malta and a few from Wales, looking at the registration page. So you already are within a managed service. So all of your classes will already be set up, and they're called our registration classes. You can't really do anything with those. They are preset by your SIM system. But what you can do is you can set up teaching classes. So this allows you to pick and choose to create smaller groups of children within your registration class. So for example, maybe when you're teaching maths, you might have 3, 4, 5 different groups that are all working at slightly different levels. So setting up teaching classes can make it a lot easier to share differentiated tasks or activities with your students. As I said, I'm not going to show you how to do this, but there is a video on YouTube. It's only a 2-minute video. So that'll show you how to do that. So that is done through J2 Dashboard. Within the Classes tab, just click the plus and then select the children. And there you go, Bob's your uncle. You've got your teaching class. So that's definitely worth thinking about. Now, we're going to hop into our games-based learning. Again, I'm just going to showcase this. I'm a big advocate of Spell Blast, but we've also got TT Blast, which is our times tables blast. And we've also got Sats Blast, Key Stage 2. Now, we are looking at renaming this more Maths Blast as opposed to Sats Blast. But these give you lots of different variations. So I'll just load it up, and it is just here. So as you can see, we've got the 5 different games. We've got Spell Blast, where you can set your own spellings. TT Blast, where they can have a go at times tables. Sats Blast, Key Stage 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to have a look at the Sats Blast. They all work in a very similar manner. They have a take a test area. So you have no control over what level they're working at, but that will track them with AI. So it gives them incrementally more complex problems to solve. So as they correctly solve them, it moves them more and more up the skills level. However, this side here, they can choose the level that they're going to practice. They get points every time they practice, and you will get a class leaderboard. So you can see that's my class. You'll get a school leaderboard. There we go. And there's also a world leaderboard. I mean, when you look at some of these points, I don't know how long these children play these games, but there's a child there with 1 million points. Phenomenal. So the children can click on the have a practice area. They're given a number of different levels to choose from. So it starts quite simply. We've got adding and subtracting a 2-digit number and ones. We can move these on. It is a combination of times tables and division, fractions, adding and subtracting. So there's lots and lots of different levels to choose from. So we've got square and cube. Now, I would be interested actually, especially if we've got any maths coordinators or maths experts out there, if these levels aren't what you think they should be, or if you would like to improve these levels, just get in touch with us. So I will give you some details at the end, but my email is nikki@j2e.com. I'd love to hear if you think we could improve these levels. We've already improved the Key Stage 1 levels, and we're always open to advice from our teachers. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to go for level 1 just for my own sanity. I'm going to click continue, and it's going to give your children various problems to solve. So very easy to start with. She says, oh my goodness, 83. It's been a while. 69. There we go. So they keep going. So they've got questions. 36 questions. I think if they incorrectly answer a few at a time, it will halt that test if they incorrectly answer it twice. They can save a copy to their My Files as well. But you will get, if I go back to Sats Blast, you do get some feedback here. So when they play, you'll get feedback in terms of the classes. So we can see here class 1, class literacy group 1, 2, we've got maths group. So let's have a look at our maths group. And I can see I'm the only one that's playing in maths group, but I can have a look at that user. And that's going to give me an idea of when I played it and how many I got wrong. Although it's showing that. Here we go. Let's go for correct. Attempted. I don't know why it's not showing that data, but it should show you how many they got correct and how many they got incorrect. Let's go for the year. No, it might be because I'm teacher. But that will give you some feedback. So there you go. So Blast. Timetable Blast, that's just your timetable and division, I think. And then Stats Blast is your numeracy skills in general. Right, now for the Key Stage 2 specific stuff. We're going to look at JIT Branch. So this is a fabulous software. As far as we know, this is the only one of its kind. There's no other software that does this, and it's all around branching databases, funnily enough. So this features, I know in the English curriculum, it's year 4 maths. I suspect in the Northern Irish curriculum, it's P5, and I think it's revisited again in P7 as part of your science curriculum. So let's have a look. So it's found within JIT, which is our Just2easy infant toolkit, which is, I always say this, don't discount it for your older students. There are still some appropriate tools for your older students. It is 8 tools within it. You can see these tools are in tabs here, and Branch is this lovely purple one. Now, another thing that I always point out, but is quite a nice classroom management tool, is the surround with the page will change colour. So you can see across the classroom which student is off making an animation instead of doing their branching database. So it's quite a useful tool in itself. Now, as with any JIT tool, it will prompt us to choose a template. There are various templates to choose from. These are just backgrounds. Now, personally, because I was an SEND teacher, I prefer the blank background just to keep it simple visually, but it's really personal preference. You can choose any of these backgrounds that you want to. So there we go. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add in some data to classify. So I'm going to add in some animals. I'm just going to keep it simple. So I've got my animals here, and I'm going to click. So when I click on any of the animals, it's going to add that into my branching database, ready to classify. Now, if I add something by mistake, I've got a duplicate piece of data here. If I hover over that data, I can just click that bin, and that's going to remove it straight away. So let's add some really different animals. I might choose something. Let's go for a whale. There we go. So I've got 4 very different pieces of data. Now I might get rid of this camel actually, and I might think of something else that isn't in this clip art library. So I've actually got my web search function here. So this features in all of our JIT tools. And I'm going to search for, let's go for a jellyfish. And I hit enter, and that's going to give me lots of options. So this is another way of maybe building up those digital skills. Instead of using the clip art, you could get children to search for actual physical photographs instead. So here we go. I'm going to choose jellyfish photograph instead. You can also classify words. I don't know why you would do that, but you might have more imagination than I do. So there you go. You've got the various different options there. The other thing that you can do is you can take a photograph. So I have got an idea for that, which I will tell you in a second, but there is the photo option there. Now, just to highlight, we do have a simple mode and an advanced mode. So just to show you the advanced mode, this is the difference. It allows you to add titles and descriptions. So this creates more of like a top trumps kind of activity. So how I would use this in a classroom is I would get my students to incorporate this into kind of a research project. So I'd get them to research facts about those animals. You know, you might get them to look at, I don't know, how long they live, how much they weigh, what they eat, areas that they live. And they can add that into the description and then use those different pieces of data that they found in their research to then focus the questions. Okay, so that's the difference. But for the purpose of the demonstration, I'm going to keep it simple. And then you go to sort, and you're going to start using a question. So you might say, can I fly? And then you're going to drag the content that it applies to. So the yes and the no's. And there we go. Okay, now if you've added something into the incorrect side, you can hover over it and just use that recycle icon. Not quite sure why we use the recycle icon, but there we go. And then you click OK, and you're going to keep doing that for each question. So you're going to say, now this did this yesterday, and I think it's because I'm using the combination of photos and clip art. Sophie, if you could add that to the tech team to fix job, that would be really helpful because I should have tested this. So now I'm just going to have to pretend that I know what those 2 pieces of those 2 pictures actually are. So I'm going to say, do I have a skeleton? See, impressed? Jellyfish don't have skeletons. And then I'm just going to have to guess with the other two. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to say, I don't know, do I live in the, what was it? So I'm going to go for a C. I'm going to drag this and pretend that it does, and drag this and pretend that it doesn't, and then click OK. So that should show my clip art libraries. The tech team are very good. They'll have fixed that by the end of the evening. If you've been on any of my webinars, you'll know there's always something that goes horribly wrong in every webinar. So yeah, we'll pretend that this looks like the proper branching database that it's supposed to. So now if I go to play, I'm going to select my jellyfish because it's the only one we can see. So can the jellyfish fly? Nope. Do I have a skeleton? No. And it's a jellyfish. So there we go. You can add more data. So you can click no. You can add another item. So that will allow you to add another item. Now I can't think of anything that lives in the sea that doesn't have a skeleton. So we're going to leave that. Then with branch, you can save that using the save button. You would obviously rename that. So branch animals. And you can click save, and that's going to save to your My Files. Now, another nice thing about JIT, that save button will grey out. So students get that feedback, they know it's saved, and you know that you're not going to get 20 copies of the same file in your pupil files. Okay. Right, moving on. Let's leave that catastrophe of branching database behind us. This was the idea that I would love a class to have a go at. So this is Guess Who. It is on the resource library as an activity, so it does give you an idea of how you can do it. And we've got this example here, which is broken now because I've broken my branching database. But all of these should be people. And this is why I would like a class to do this, if you use the photograph option, you could get the children to take selfies and pictures of their classmates. So you're developing their digital photography skills. And then they could use the questions to classify and have a class Guess Who game. So if you manage to do that, then please post about it on Facebook or Twitter and tag us in it because I'd love to see it. So that would be exactly the same. You just use the photo option instead of the clip art. So there we go. Right, I'm going to showcase database now. So this is a great way of looking at data, which obviously is a sort of substantial part of the maths curriculum in your statistics, I want to say. And there are two main uses for this. So you could get them to create their own database. Three main uses, actually. Create their own database. You could create a collaborative database as a class and get students to input data to create records. Or we've also got examples. So I will circle back to the Titanic database once I've shown you how to do the collaborative databases. So this is an example of a collaborative database. This is my class, or my pretend class. And this is just, collecting various bits of data about them. And they've then created a record per child, so you can see. And it allows us to analyze that data so we can fine tune, maybe, for example, let's look at the children that like science. So we can look at keyword science. We've got 3 children that their favorite subject is science. We could look at car. So who gets a car to school? So again, we've got 3 children that get the car to school. So how did I do this? So database, I'm going to close this down. Database can be found within J2 data, funnily enough, here. So these are the 3 data tools that we've got within JIT. So pictogram and chart are there. I did showcase those in the Key Stage 1 session. So if you do want to know more about those, you can look at that on YouTube. Database is here. Just to highlight as well, we've also got these examples. Now you can access these when you're in database, but that is the main area that you can explore examples. There's examples of pictogram, chart, branch, and there's lots of database examples. So there's database, and this is our blank database. you've got your field. So we've just got one single field at the moment. So what we can do is we can define our database. So we're going to start with a field name, just very simply. I'm going to just have a class database. I might have foot size, and let's go for fave subject. Okay. So a very simple database. There's only 3 fields. Just to draw your attention to the type, so you can change the type. So text, that's fine for name. Foot size, obviously that's going to be a number. So if I use this drop-down menu, I've got lots of options here. So you can personalize your database. This is a great way of linking it then back into real life context. So often when you're teaching databases, you want to link it back to, well, when would we use this? And that's when you tell them, well, most websites where you order things, you know, things like Smith's and Argos and Sainsbury's, they are all databases. They're just collections of objects that are listed with price and name and photo. So you have a photo option here. You've got date, you've got email, phone. So you can use this in many different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the type number for foot size, and then fave subject, I'm actually going to use the option for list. So the reason you would do that is you could leave that as text, but you may get children that type this differently. So for example, a few students might have religious education as their favourite subject. So some of them might write RE, some of them might write religion, some of them might write religious education or religious studies. Now, all 4 of those will list as different pieces of data, even though they mean the same thing. So if you give them a list, they can just tick something and choose it. So let's go with RE, let's go with DT, with ICT, let's go with a non-acronym. There we go, history. Now, the other thing you can do is you can add units in as well. So if you're doing height, you could measure that in centimetres or millimetres. Again, linking into your measurement side of your maths curriculum. Now, students could do that on their own, and they can save that. But as a teacher, database class 1, you would name that and save it. So if you want your children to engage with that particular database, if you want to make it collaborative, you need to click share here. That's going to open up this share box. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit just so you can see. It's very much like any sort of share box that we have within My Files. You've got this little drop down arrow here. So you use that. So we click on that. There we go. And I've got my different options here. Now, depending on which managed service you're joining us from, I know C2K, I think you don't have your class listed. You're in a staff class. It's just the way C2K is set up, unfortunately. But you will be able to access your class through the all classes area. Okay, you've also got options for teaching classes. So again, if you've set up those teaching classes, you could set that for maths group 1. So maybe that's my advanced group and only they are engaging with this particular activity. Or you could set for individual users. I'm going to set that for my class. So I can set for multiple groups of students. So, you know, this is great maybe if you're teaching maths in lots of different classes across your year group. Or if you're teaching, you know, different year groups, maybe you've got a year 3 and 4 group. So you could set that for the different groups. And there we go. Now, if I want it to be collaborative, if I want them to add things into that database, I'd have to tick these boxes that say edit, otherwise it won't work. So that is an important step that we find that a lot of people miss, and they, you know, message into support. That is why your database won't be collaborative, because you need to tick that edit box. And there we go. And that's done. So now, just to show you my student account, bear with me, there we go. So this is Lottie, she's in my class. She would learn that she goes to the shared files area. She ticks this box that says list files. There's that database. And she can go to the form. She can add into this database. And she can choose her favourite subject, which is going to be ICT, obviously. And she can hit save. Now, she can add more than one record. There's no way for us to stop them from doing that, unfortunately. But that might be nice if maybe as a group they've collected some data and they have one person typing, they can add multiple records. So let's just add in a bit of extra data. So for an RE, so we can say save, and let's go for Davy 3, and let's go for ICT again and hit save. So I'm going to go back to my teacher account. I'm just going to refresh that page, and there we go. I've got my data that my students have input. I can see it in a form, or I can see it in a table, and I can also create charts if I want to. Okay, I'm going to look more at the charts in the databases in a second. Now I could search for maybe the favourite subjects that have ICT, and I can see there's 2 people that like ICT the best. So that's a simple collaborative database. Now I'm going to circle back to the Titanic database because that's always a winner. Within the examples, as I said, within J2 data, you can access the examples there, or within database, the examples are at the top. And here we go. So these are real life contexts for databases. We've got the Titanic passenger list, got mini beasts, toy shop, dinosaurs. That's another good one. Countries. So it's a great way of children manipulating real life data in a database. So just to show you Titanic and all the things that we can do with this. So again, if I was teaching in class, it's been a while, but if I was teaching this in a class, I would kind of set them some problems. And that is how that library resource would be really handy, because that actually has the problems already written, so you don't have to make them up. And much like coding, I would get them to kind of just let them loose and then help them to think about how we can make our searches more efficient. So for example, I might want to know how many children there were on board. So of course, the first thing the children are going to do, if you don't give them any guidance, is they're going to look through these records and they're going to try and find, well, there's 1 child, there's 2 children, there's three, I mean, 18, yeah, I suppose you count them as a child. Very inefficient way of manipulating the data because they've got 1,300 records. So what you can say is if we go to the table, that's a slightly better view. So we can scroll through this data. I mean, there's loads of it. Okay. But what we can do is use this search option here. So I can either keyword search. So for example, maybe I'm looking for people called Harry on board. So I could just type Harry. That's going to show me there's 7, but actually one of them's got a middle name as Harry. So it's technically 6. So that's one way of doing it. But if I use this little magnifying glass, I've got the option to fine tune that data a little bit more. So I can use this drop down menu. So let's go for age. We're going to have equal to or less than, which I think is this one. And we're going to add in the value, which is 18, hit enter, and there we go. So that has refined that data from 1,300 pieces of data to 230. Now I might want to know how many boys were on board. So that's when you can start developing your and or options. So I can add an and. So I could say, right, so I want gender to be equal to male. And there we go. I've got 125 male children on board. And I might want to know how many of those boys survived. So again, I could go and survivor or victim equals to value equals survived. And then we've only got 36. Okay, so it's a great way of manipulating data. Now I'm just going to cancel these out. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the chart. So the chart's slightly different to the table. It allows us to correlate the data in a more visual format. So we can start tallying our X and Y axes. We can start grouping things. So I'm going to look at the classes and which survived and which didn't. So let's have a look. We'll go for class. So we can see there's a disproportionate number of people in the 3rd class, probably the same amount as the 1st and 2nd combined. I'm going to group those according to whether they survived or not. And there we go. I've got a disproportionate amount of people in the third class that didn't survive combined with the first and the second. Okay, so straight away I can see that. I've got different data types, so chart types, so I can look at that in a pie chart. I've got my bar chart and my sideways bar chart. I can stack them instead if I wanted to. There we go. I can make that 3D, so it looks a little bit funky. I've also got the option to do things like scatter charts. So this isn't the right data for a scatter chart. That would be more your dinosaur data, and your line chart. Again, it's not the right data, but there we go. There is our classes that survived or didn't. And you can save that as a picture. Now, what's great about that is you can then use that in different formats. So I could use that in JIT Mix or J2E5, and I could write about that data. So, and analysing that data. Right, I'm going to have to move forwards because I'm well over my time. That is in the resource library. So that is a J2E5 file ready for the children to use. They can add in their answers. For the database, they need to go to view, and then they can click on that link and it will link, and then click edit to add in their answers. So have a look at that. There is a follow-up activity to that as well. So there is Titanic Database 1 and 2. Right, I'm not going to look at mix. I covered this in the Key Stage 1 session, so please have a look at that. But that was just an idea. So I've used the data that I've just saved as an image. You can use that as a picture or as a paint page in JIT Mix. And there's the analysis of that data. So that, you know, part of the data, part of the curriculum is collecting the data, and then part of it is analysing and showing what we know from that data. So we can see there that disproportionate number of first class passengers that survived versus the number of third class passengers that died. So they're able to show what they know about that data. J2 code and logo. So logo is one of our coding offering. So here it is here. It has 3 levels. It says it's Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 3. I would never use this in Key Stage 1 personally. Depends how high level your students are. There is a level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is the most terrifying looking one. But actually, once you get your head around it, it's not too bad. We've got things like forwards, backwards, left, right, pen down, pen up, home, clear canvas or clear script, colour and repeat. So I would teach this using things like polygons. So can we draw a polygon? So to draw a simple square, the children, when they initially do this, they're going to have forwards, left, forwards, left, forwards, left, forwards, left 4 times. So that's really inefficient way of doing our coding. So that's when you introduce your repeats. And then in these brackets, we can add in forwards and left. And then when we hit play, there we go. We've got our square. So a great way of sort of introducing polygons. Then you can get children to problem solve. So how could I change that to maybe creating a hexagon? Now, quick tip. You want your sprite to go 360 degrees back to the starting point. So this angle here and this number here should equal 360. I haven't explained that very well. So this is a great way of building in your times tables. So if I know my hexagon has 6 sides and 6 corners. So the repeat needs to be 6. Okay, so to find that angle, I'm going to divide 360 by 6. So that angle is going to be 60. Okay, I'm going to hit play. There we go. We've got our hexagon. If I wanted it to be a pentagon, I would have that as 5, and I would have that as 75, I want to say. So there you go. So then you can get your students to make octagons, decahedron, you know what I mean? The bigger shapes. So there we go. So that's logo. You can clear the canvas as well. And then we've also got spirograph. So spirograph, this one here, is just using more of the commands and the repeats and changing the forwards and the lefts. Again, there's a resource in the resource library about how to do that. So don't let it put you off. It does look a little bit scary, but actually once you start using it a little bit, and I would just set my kids off and give them a challenge and see if they can do it, personally. J2E5, measuring angles. Again, I did this in the Key Stage 2, Key Stage 1 activity. So J2E5 is here. There are measuring tools here with this compass. So we have a ruler, protractor, compass. So we can drag these on. Okay. If you add something onto the page by mistake, you can just hit delete. I've got my protractor. I'm just going to pop this over here. Now to make those angles, I can use my shape drawing tool. So there are different shapes up here as well. So some preset shapes. So you could get them to measure the angle of this heart, for example, or the pentagon. Or you can use this tool here. So this is our shape drawing tool. I tend to use it for drawing triangles. So I'm going to choose the small pen. And I'm going to click where I want to start my shape, click where I want my first corner. And then this is the trick. When you get to the last corner of your shape, if you double click, it will link back to the starting point. So if I double click, there's my triangle. Okay, I could do that with, let's go for a parallelogram. So I'm going to go corner and try, and then double click. So there we go. Easy. If I want to move that shape, I can use my selection tool and just move that around. I can also adjust that shape once I've drawn it, so I can move that corner out and make it more of a isosceles triangle, for example, and I can pull this corner out from my parallelogram. There we go. Now to draw the sort of joining up lines, I use my line drawing tool. I'm going to go from one side to the other. And you're going to say to me, right, well, that's not really a curvy line like we normally do with angles. So I'm going to click on my selection tool. There we go. I'm going to click on my line, and then I'm going to click on that red. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can see. See, there's a red box. Click on that red box, and that gives me the option to then drag that line out. Easy when you know how. So there we go. There is our angles. So my students, I would save that and share that with my students, but they can use this protractor to then measure that angle. So there you go. So you would save that there. So I'd say angles. And then you can share within J2E5. So there's my share button, and I can share that with my class, and they now have access to that particular worksheet. So easy peasy. Okay. I am going to run over, as always. I need to start making these hour-long webinars. So if you do need to get off, fully understand, this is recorded and will be added to YouTube. But if you've got time, please hang around. I'm not going to be much longer. So this is using existing worksheets in PDF, J2 PDF. So the problem with PDFs is you can't type on them. So that's how J2 PDF is going to help you. So I'm going to give you the example of adding in Key Stage 2 SATs arithmetic practice papers. So I've got that already saved on my desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up J2 PDF, which is here. And I'm going to open up my folder that I've got my SATs paper, and I'm just going to drag that onto that box. And that is going to import that SATs paper. There we go, easy peasy, onto a J2E5 page. Now this is a multi-page document, but the children can click anywhere and start typing. So it's got multiple pages. There we go. You can also delete pages, so maybe that second page isn't relevant. So we've got our multi-page tool. We can just click on this button and we can delete that page. Okay, so there we go, one less page. I could add some audio instructions with my audio tool here. So I could record some sound. Please practice this test. There we go. And I can lay that on. I could add some instructions on the side, or I don't know, success criteria or something for them. And then I can save that again. SATs paper practice. Helps if I can spell. I can save that. That saves into my files. Now, the bigger the PDF, the longer that save process is going to take. Should have picked a smaller PDF. But this would work for things like Twinkle PDFs, Salamander Maths PDFs, White Rose Maths. So if you're already using those worksheets in class, this is a great way of having that as a digital tool instead. Oh my goodness, there we go. And then you can save. So same as we did with our J2E5 file, use that drop-down menu, class 1, and my students now have access to that. They can click anywhere, they can type on it, they can save it. Okay, so that's J2 PDF. Right, the library activity showcase. I know that I've got some Welsh users joining this particular webinar. You don't have access to the library, unfortunately. There is a workaround. Sophie actually very kindly is going to share the presentation, so that is accessible to anyone. So if you want this presentation to refer back to, it's going to be in the chat. And when you open it up, it will just open into your J2E account. You can save this to your My Files, but the links will work and they will link to the resource library. So I am just going to quickly go through these. These are just resources that we have in the resource library. So there are hundreds, tens, and units activities. These are draggable, so kids can drag the hundreds, tens, and units. We've got some addition activities. We've got column addition, three column numbers, something like that, and more complex. And we've also got some rather funky themed ones for Halloween. Subtraction, so we've got column subtraction and some net subtraction boxes. We've got multiplication games, so they have to click, circle all of the multiples of 9. So they just use the circle tool. Long multiplication and short multiplication is in there. We've got division activities, number problems. So this is a spot the mistake. We've also got some code breaker activities. We've got fraction resources. So that's what I was doing my Friday night last week. How cool am I? So these were made especially for your session because we realised we didn't have many fraction activities. So there's things like building walls out of fractions, dragging the fraction that applies, all sorts. Algebra resources. So I know that's kind of top of your Key Stage 2. There is only one at the moment, but if you like that, let me know and I can make some more. Geometry, so symmetry, so drawing your own symmetrical picture. Angles measurement, there you go. So there's some pre-made ones, both with a ruler and a protractor. Money activities and some generic other activities that I couldn't really group with anything else. Now, when you click on these, it opens it up in the library. You can like that resource. So if you do like it, that will go to your liked resources. So, you might see something you think that'd be brilliant, but in spring 1 or spring 2, and you don't want to forget about it. So if you like it, that will save into your liked resources. If you want your students to access it, you have to share it, and they would access that through the library. They only access content that is shared with them by a teacher. And you can also set it as homework. So if you're using J2 homework, you can click that box and it sets it as homework. The community is there. So there's a whole raft of different resources, not just for maths. There's phonics and literacy and science and humanities and all sorts. So please have a look. And that is the end of that. 5 minutes over. That's pretty good considering I thought I was going to be about 15 minutes over at one point. So thank you very much for joining us for our webinar. Just to highlight, I changed that to the X logo. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, under Just2easy_com and Facebook. So please give us a like and a follow. If you do create any stuff with your students, we'd love to see it. So, post about it, tag us in anything. We're getting loads of activity ideas on our feeds as well. So we love to share stuff. And then just to highlight, we are on YouTube as well. So Just2easy TV. All the webinars are recorded, so you can access them on demand. And I'm just wondering if we've had any questions that Sophie can't answer. I'd be surprised if we did. So I'm going to have a look at the chat now. But if you have got any questions that you want me to answer, just type them in the chat and I will see what I can do. Looks like Sophie is on the ball as always. You're very welcome. Thank you. It's always nice to get good feedback. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. It doesn't have to be about anything you've seen today. If there's something that you think, do you know what, I really want to know how that works, just pop it in the chat and I can go through it. If not, if you want to run off, I fully understand. It's 4:20 on a Wednesday. Who doesn't want to run off? But I will be hanging around for a couple more minutes. So if you do want to ask me anything, you can. So thank you very much for joining us. We've loved having you. And we hope to see you for another webinar soon. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. Okay, I'm going to assume with the text silence that everyone is happy. So I am going to end this webinar now. So thank you very much. Feel free to join us for more webinars. You can book them at just2easy.com/training. And we'll see you again soon. Okay, good night.